I just tell TJack survival dispatch. Just sit in water. This is Tyler with TJack Survival and Survival Dispatch. I've seen a ton of videos that are referencing that multi-car, I'm gonna call it a pileup, the group of people that were stuck on the highway back east in a big storm. And I've seen some good information and I've seen some really horrifically bad information. So I wanted to make a video on this real quick. I quite literally just opened up the back of my vehicle. I moved a couple things out of the shot that weren't relevant, but I haven't done any preparation on this vehicle, which I think is key. It's the most important thing. I would like more things if I knew that I was about to be stranded, but the reality is I would have to use what I've already got in the vehicle. Now, I teach survival classes, so I've got some stuff that are not relevant. Like, you don't need a buck saw in the back of your vehicle, but I have one because I taught a class earlier this week. But there are some things that you do need. This little netting here, not gonna go into it in super depth, but it's super handy because I can have that jangly stuff that sloshes around all in one location where I don't have to deal with it. This is primarily survival instructor related stuff, but right back there is the most important thing. So in survival or in a survival situation, first off, we have to define what that is. Survivalists don't die, right? So then we have to say, well, what's going to kill me first? And in the instance back east where they all got stranded for almost, I want to say it was 24 or 48 hours on a highway, well, cold is going to kill you first. So then the most simple answer is, well, do something to not be cold, right? And I've seen everything from catching a fire in paint cans to just other silliness, and that just sounds dangerous and not very smart. So when I go up to northern Canada and do stuff in February, it gets negative 30 plus pretty regularly. First place I lived growing up, we had a ranch, and it was up in a valley up in Idaho, and it would get negative 50. Not regularly, but it got down to negative 50. And I think if you're preparing for those situations, everything else is gonna be easy, right? So last time I drove to Canada, all I did is I took 2 sleeping bag systems. I put the foot box of one inside the foot box of the other, and I slept in it, right? I brought a buddy heater, and I brought propane for it, but I never needed it. On that note, if you do have a propane heater and it is severely below freezing, then the propane isn't always gonna work because propane can't turn into a gas if it's not warm enough. So even propane buddy heater won't work in some instances. Now, I kept it in the back of this vehicle, and I knew that if it was getting so cold that I needed it, I'd have to start it up and use the heat to keep it warm. So basically, when I went to Canada, I put 2 sleeping bags together, one on the bottom, one on the top, slept just fine. I spent the night in negative 30 at truck stations, didn't have to pay for a place to stay. But the reality is, if I was stranded on the side of the road like they were, all I'd have to do is crawl in my sleeping bag and go to sleep, right? Pull it off to the side of the road, do what you're gonna do. So, having said that, I had a mattress that I brought with me, and this mattress stays in my vehicle all the time. So if I decide I need to go teach a class or I want to go somewhere last minute, I don't have to pack my vehicle with stuff. And why the mattress? Well, when you sleep in a sleeping bag, your body compresses the sleeping bag, and that takes away its insulation value. Insulation comes from dead air space that's heated up and not moving. And if you've compressed that dead air space, it's no longer heated and it's moving, right? You're pushing yourself, you're pushing your body against a metal vehicle, and that's cold. So an inflatable mattress, this is the Fox Outfitters mattress, go check those guys out. That prevents me from losing heat by pushing my body against a cold metal frame. Okay, the actual sleeping bag I've got, this is a 2-layer Special Forces snug pack. And then I throw a whoopee inside there because that makes a good pillow, and you can use this when it's too hot. And then lastly, I've got a Gore-Tex shell. This is one of those military issue Gore-Tex shells you can go get at an Army Navy surplus store. This is important because I'm not just using this sleeping bag in my vehicle, I also want to take it out and do things. And if it's cold, this will stop the wind, and if it's wet, this will stop the water. So I have a dry situation, right, with my sleeping bag, and I can also keep this sleeping bag in the Gore-Tex layer and then keep all of that in this waterproof bag. So this is a military, old school military dry bag that I like to use because they're cheap and I've got a bunch of them. Okay, like I said, this is what I have in my bag. If I knew that I was gonna go back up to Canada where it's -30 and I was gonna stay in the vehicle, I'd bring 2 of these, right? Because I can unzip this, put it inside that Gore-Tex layer, and then put another version of these, just those military 3-layer systems, put one toe box inside the other toe box, and I basically have a spread out open sleeping bag underneath me and a spread out open sleeping bag on top of me, and it's super comfortable even when it's -30 or -50 degrees. And I just lay this back seat down and I can crash comfortably. It's very cold the next day, right? It's freezing. It's hard to get out of a sleeping bag, but I just spent the night, for however many nights I need, comfortably without some silliness or some sort of carbon monoxide problem or a fire or a fuel source that I'm gonna run out. If you bring enough insulation, you don't need to have a fire. Okay, the next level up, I have a bunch of older military issue, we call them marshmallow suits, that I keep in this bag because I'm not the only one that's in this vehicle. And especially my winter kit, I leave it in a parachute bag so that I can grab it and go. And when it's not winter or it's not cold enough or when I don't need it or I need more space, I just take this out. And then I've got trunk space that I can do stuff with. So this parachute bag has... This is this material is basically like wearing a sleeping bag, right? Maybe it's so cold you want to wear a sleeping bag inside of your sleeping bag. Maybe you need to go out and do stuff, but you're wearing a suit and flat bottom shoes, right? That's a massive issue. So we start off with the vest, which I like to use on the regular, and then it's got a Primaloft top and bottom. Here's the top, there's another bottom, and I have multiples of these, so there's enough for 2.5 adults, right? And then I also have a Gore-Tex pants and a Gore-Tex top. So if I'm wearing something like this and I go up in the mountains and I get stuck and I'm gonna spend the night, I can throw this Primaloft insulation layer on, and then I can throw this Gore-Tex top and bottom on, and then I have enough for another adult in here as well. I've got an extra Carhartt jacket to work in and stuff. But all of this is, the key takeaway, all of this is just insulation, right? It's a way to stay warm. If you're wearing the right kind of clothes, it doesn't matter if you've got a fire or all that other stuff. So really the simplest answer is usually the best, right? The people that spent the night or spent multiple days in their vehicles should have had a sleeping bag or some sort of top and bottom clothing, extra socks, thick wool socks, because when you need that stuff, oftentimes it's because you didn't wear the appropriate clothing for the environment. So if you need to, if your feet are cold, it's probably because you're wearing the wrong kind of shoes. If you just add some running shoes or some boots or some thick heavy socks to your bag or your loadout, you can wear just those socks and you can sit in your sleeping bag in the front of your car and crash or stay up, whatever you want to do, right? And something like this will fit in 99% of vehicles. I can't think of any vehicle that doesn't have a sleeping bag level of space in the back of them. And if you're going to deal with multiple people, just double it up, right? So the only other stuff that I have that is a little more unique to me, that isn't specifically a need for spending the night in extreme cold, is I've got water, because I spend a ton of time in the desert. That's 5 gallons. That'll last me 5 days at minimum, and within 5 days I should be able to replenish or find another water source or something. I have MREs and straps, because I pull a trailer, I need to be able to strap that stuff down. That's another bag of straps, the NRS straps that I use in my rafting gear, because I'll put stuff on the roof, it's valuable, right? So I've got that medical kit. That's important because maybe you're in a car accident or something bad happens, you need to deal with that kind of stuff. So this netting guy right here has a bunch of training aids, a bunch of tools. I've got some trekking type poles because we were cross-country skiing a while ago. I've got extra gaiters in here. They aren't needed, but they're nice to have. These are the attachment for the poles. I've got a army poncho, some axes. Again, this is more so for teaching survival classes. I have something to eat out of a bowl. This is a jungle bag that I usually take out in the winter time, but why, right? It could go inside of the other snug pack bag. This is a large saw, more ponchos, a spare ultralight backpack. These are pants they're wool pants for the winter. A little bit of oil, some cooking utensils, another dry bag, a couple of bow drills I stuffed in here, some maps. Again, these are things that you don't need, but of these things, if I were to suggest you something, it would be the military poncho, the saw, and the insulation layers. The last thing I'm going to mention when it comes to building a civilian loadout kit or just putting stuff in your car is food and water. I have water, I've already talked about that. You can go for a week without food. You don't need food, but it is nice because one, it keeps you warm, right? High fatty foods are the fuel for the fire that's going to keep you warm inside of a sleeping bag like this. And two, it keeps you from being cranky, keeps your kids from being cranky. So in addition to this, the only thing I would add, a little bag full of some Snickers and some snacks and that kind of things, some water, and if you got to go to the restroom, you're going to want some toilet paper. I've got some toilet paper smashed right down there. You don't need it, but it sure is handy. All right, guys, the takeaway, put some sleeping bags in your car, right? Do the most obvious thing, throw some food, throw some water, and then just chill out, because you're not going to sit there and run your car until you're out of gas. Otherwise, you just create another problem. Hopefully that was valuable to you. If you have suggestions or comments, leave them down below. Thanks for watching.